Hi everyone! It's week 3 of the Healthy Relationships campaign, and the Wellness Peers this week are going to touch on what it looks like to have difficult conversations with people that you care a lot about. Healthy relationships don't necessarily mean perfect relationships at all times. And though we really care about our friends and our family and our loved ones, it's okay to find yourself in situations where you might be having challenging conversations with them that may make you or them or both a little uncomfortable. It's when you're able to overcome these difficult conversations that you can have even healthier, stronger, and richer relationships. And so this week, we're going to be sharing tips and strategies on how we can better have these difficult conversations.
How do you handle difficult conversations?
Well, I think the best thing to do before you have any difficult conversation is take a few moments to yourself to gather your thoughts and kind of spell out things for you before you approach the person, because there's nothing worse than starting a difficult conversation in a state of anger, because we know from that it won't get any productivity out of that conversation. So if you take some time for yourself, maybe jot down your thoughts on a piece of paper. I find that when I know I need to have a difficult conversation, I take that time for myself and kind of analyze and think about things I want to say. I also think it's a really great idea not to bring up past arguments that you've had before. Focus on what's bothering you in the present time and try not to let the things that have been building up come to surface right at this very conversation. Leave those things in the past and focus on what's making you need this conversation right now. I think a really important thing about having difficult conversations is listening. Conversation is just as much about talking as it is about listening. So if you listen to your partner and afford them the same respect you would like to be offered when you're having these two conversations, that's incredibly important, because it shows them that you do care and that you do value their thoughts and that you want to progress from whatever this conflict is. It makes for a more efficient conversation and a more peaceful conversation. Respect is the basis of any good relationship.
It's really important to keep in mind when I have to have a difficult conversation with someone I care about is knowing how I will personally respond when I'm in a situation where I may be a little bit stressed out, or we may be bringing up extremely difficult emotions that may make both of us uncomfortable. I know personally, just from experience over the years, I like having a little bit of time to reflect and think about my responses, especially if we're discussing maybe something like things that's bothering each other about each other, right? If I feel like if I had that conversation face to face or over the phone call, I might be tempted to respond based off of my first initial emotion. And that might sometimes be something that's negative, like anger or like frustration, or I might even get defensive. Like, that's not what I normally do. So for me, a lot of the times it's helpful to maybe just have this conversation online, because then I can take a step back and reread maybe what they told me, kind of see what they need from me in that moment, and also just to calm like any defensive emotions that come to the surface.
For me, when I'm having a difficult conversation with someone that I really care about, I'd like to have that conversation in person, because it allows me to show them where I'm coming from, and it allows me to really see where the other person is coming from as well. I know personally that when I am about to have a difficult conversation with someone that may make myself as well as them uncomfortable, I try my very best to empathize with them and to understand their perspective and acknowledge that I understand their perspective, so that no one in the situation feels like they're being attacked, and that it's a progress that we can work towards together. And as well, for me, when I'm having these difficult conversations, I have a tendency to feel bad about making the other person feel upset or making the other person feel uncomfortable. But I struggle with sharing my true perspectives at times, because I don't want to hurt the other person's feelings. And so for me, it's been really helpful to think up of a list of things that I want to touch on and talk about before even starting the conversation with that person, so that I can share everything that's on my mind, and so that we can work it out together in a very empathetic way.